dominant forms of hip-hop, fin, bubblegum-like, hollow, shallow, stimulating body, no stirring, no soul, which is very, very sad because young people need soul-stirring music.
Yo, what up? Luxurious.
Drums and ammo.
Ghetto. Gifted. Ammbaataa.
It's Ammbaataa, baby.
Check.
Damn, where you at? Where you at?
I'm at the warehouse.
Woo. Okay.
Yeah.
I see. That's how we starting it at the warehouse, huh?
Yeah, because like a compliant weed now. Don't let me go out my trunk and out the garage no more.
Oh, here we go. All right, that's what we're talking about. Well,
so we gotta get it. Yeah, that's what we talking about. That's what we here for.
We here.
What's up with a homie though?
Man, let me give you that proper intro. So the podcast is This, That, and the Third. I want to introduce to the folks Nina Parks, old school homie that I met back in, I don't know, I'm gonna say 2009, 2010, 2000, in that era, that sweet.
It was post hyphy.
Yeah.
It was post hyphy, and we were in like the creative, like we were in like massive creative mode still though. It was that's how I remember it. How do you remember it?
It was like a real we had Sweetbread's Creative Collective, which was the label.
That's right.
And that brought together the super team. That's what I felt like. I felt like I felt privileged to be a part of a group of folks that felt like, like they each respective, like, hold up, yeah. Okay, good.
Sorry, here we. It's like, sorry, it's like a roller coaster. It's like one of those at like what is it called? Fisherman's Wharf, where the seat moves and then.
Yeah, no, but what I was saying was, I felt privileged to be part of a collective where each individual, each of their skills, they really took a real, they put it on a pedestal and they really try to push whatever skill they had to the max. So if you were doing film, if you were doing music, video, you were pushing it, and even then you had the activism was already, it was there. You were working with the kids as far as you were doing the nonprofit stuff, and that was, it feels like that kind of like we have, of course, it was gentrification and everything going on, but even Da Vinci. Even the album that he did was kind of before it really, at least before it became like a real wide like phenomenon that we know of now. It felt like he was kind of
Which one? Feast or Famine? Was it Feast or Famine?
No, The Day the Turf Stood Still.
Oh, The Day the Turf Stood Still.
Yeah, so it kind of felt like that kind of like in my perspective, it was kind of one of the first things that kind of spearheaded a lot of other things going on. But I'm sure other stuff was going on that we just didn't know about. But to you,
no, I mean, I feel you on like the energetic pulse though, because I really do feel like the homies that were kicking it, all of that, like during that time, the Good Foot days and like all of those, just like creative convergence of energy, because like we all were out in like South by Southwest together. Everyone, like you said, everybody was going hella hard. But there was like a turning point of the energy of the city, right? There was a turning point at the energy of the city, and a lot of folks were like expressing just like how much power the arts had in our lives, and then starting to feel the economic downturn, of like the and how hard. When I say economic downturn, it was an economic downturn for working class people, right? And like a lot of the work that I was doing with young folks, they were young folks who had parents that were working class parents, And so we definitely, in the artist world, as well as like, the education world, after school education, all this stuff, like definitely started to feel like what happens when a city only focuses on their richest, right? Like they're like there's a rule that they talk about in business. They call it the 80-20 rule, right? Where it's like 80% of your time, 80% of your time you spend on 20%, like your top 20% of people, right? But you can't do that's what they do in business, but you can't do that in a society.
Yeah,
You know, that's
yeah.
that's not the move, you know what I mean? But then all of a sudden, like capitalism took over to like the greatest degree for, you know, from like, you saw it like 2008 in the city where there was like the other .com bust,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden from there forward, we've just been navigating through some mean ass economic waters in San Francisco. And I think that also like brings me to like the point with the cannabis work and the cannabis movement. It was just kind of like, yo, here's this thing, and you know how much we used to burn. Like, you know how much we used to burn. That shit was a part of our everyday life, you
Culture.
know, like that was like for real. It was just like one of those things. It's like bring water and weed,
Mhm.
you know,
Easy.
like hands down. But like San Francisco started finally, because they were also, mind you, they were late to the party in comparison to like where Oakland was. Like by the time San Francisco had started discussing its ordinance, like Oakland was ready to roll out, you know.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so San Francisco kind of like did this whole rush in 2017, like 3 months before it was supposed to transition over into adult use, you know, because 2016 people voted. They said we want adult use cannabis in California, because we already had a very robust medical, you know, like
Yeah.
network. Our
Mhm.
our 215, like we already had functional delivery services and dispensaries. Like all of that had been going for like 20 years. Like I came in, you know, like new during that time. People had already, you know, like laid the groundwork, you know. And then 2016, they did the vote. 2017, you would have thought that like folks would have taken more time. Well, like we showed up and we were asking, when are you going to pay attention to it?
Yeah, yeah.
Then all of a sudden, 3 months out, they're like, all right, we got to go
Let's go,
build
let's
out
go.
this whole bill.
Mhm.
Let's go. And
Mhm.
then proud to say we were able to at least get the equity provisions put in and like really at the forefront, but not to the degree of like what supports were needed for successful implementation. And that, like you said, like as a person that was working in youth development work and like a nonprofit and other things that had to do with the city already through the, you know, like through the Department of Children, Youth and their Families and other, you know, like and through the school district, you know, like was no stranger to the tactics that like the city be using to like not support the, you know, like the fundamental things to, you know, like to support communities that have been harmed, you know, even though they had the fucking reports. You guys can go onto the Office of Cannabis website for San Francisco and download the Cannabis Equity Report, right? And so like there's so much data in there, you know, from they comb through data from as much as they could, because like I think it was like up into 2007 or something like that, they had been like everything had been on paper, and they finally started transitioning things into onto the computer.
Mhm.
So as much as they could, they dug back from 1971 to 2016 and extracted arrest data.
Mhm.
You know, and so you can see the disparities of like which communities were policed hardest, like like what, you know, like by what percent did you know, like Black and brown folks get arrested versus non-Black and brown folks, you know. And so one of the most shocking statistics actually was like, you know, that in the late 2000s, you know, like in well, actually, no, in the early 2000s, sorry, in the early 2000s, the arrest rate was mostly Black women under the age of 25, you know, that actually were getting arrested. And upon talks with community members and like Bayview and stuff, they were like, yeah, you know why? Because our men were already locked up, or our men already had, our men already had convictions on them, or they had arrests on them. And so like women started to get more active, and like it was so distressing to even like read any of that shit, because in a city like San Francisco, like it's just barbaric, like, and that's how, like our community, like our civic leaders at the time period, like Leah Cohen, who was the district supervisor for the Bayview. That's why she like stood up and spoke very, very loudly about why it was important for us to have an equity program here. And remember, it's the second one in the entire nation. So like, it's kind of a trip. Sorry, that was a lot of talking.
No, it's no, that's the zone. That's the zone. But what I wanted to get into was the artist too. You're like, oh, that's right.
Thank you. I'm like, who am I anymore?
No, you still, because that's how we met. We met as artists, and you're and I'm sure you still practice. I'm sure you still do photography. I know back then you were doing music videos, and I stumbled on the Nina clips. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I stumbled on and I had to go watch Neo the Gift. We love Neo.
Yeah.
So I peeped that out. But so tell me how.
Thank you, Ambush.
Oh man.
It's like, you don't know. You have no idea. You have no idea how much that fills my heart. Because one of my favorite things back then was like making sure, like you had something to go back. People had something to go back and look at. That's it. Like when they find us, what are they gonna find? That's all I want to do with my camera. That's all I ever wanted to do with my camera.
Straight up. And that's what you did. It's like we left breadcrumbs. And I watched the Da Vinci, small, where he did the verse and he did the questions. Oh man, had me cracking up. Just like, oh wow, because this is happening in the height of sweetbreads. That I missed the Da Vinci interview, but it just fit right. Like the energy it just took me right back to 2010, 2009. It was like, oh wow, like this was like we needed it to embrace all those elements, and we needed folks to capture that capsule, create that capsule so we can go back and do what we're doing now. You know what I mean? Check
straight
out
up.
Straight up. But
straight up. We had stories to tell, Bush. We had so many stories to tell. Like there was so much collective motion happening. There was so much collective motion and creativity happening. And I was just blessed to be in that era that that I could be a part of it. So
Nina Parks.
Glad you went back and found it. I'm like, yeah, okay.
But you was a superhero though. That was a superhero. You had the net, you know what I mean? Like, and it just fit. It still fits. But
it's hella funny because you know me. You actually know me, and like people don't know. What people don't know is that Nina Parks isn't even my real name.
Yeah.
But you're right. Nina Parks was a superhero, and one day I'll tell that story, and like I'm just gonna leave a breadcrumb right here.
But Parks is from Gordon Parks. Right? Yeah.
From Gordon Parks. Yeah, it's from Gordon Parks, who was known as the Renaissance Man, and like the name was actually given to me. I remember when names, like it was like if you came up with your name, you had to like earn the stories to go behind the name, right? But sometimes the names are given to you, right? So for me, Parks was given to me by OC from Diggin in the Crates, who was, New York MC that was, like with Big L and, and AP, like all those folks,
Time's
right?
Fat
Joe.
Yeah. Fat Joe,
exactly.
Yeah.
Word Life, you know what I mean? So it was given to me by OC because I met him. I lost my purse in Amsterdam, which is fucked up. Like, anyways, I lost my purse in Amsterdam, had no money. So happened that like DJ Revolution and OC were out there in Amsterdam and in Europe doing a tour, right? And they just so happened to be staying at the hotel that me and my homegirl couldn't afford to stay at anymore. But we were in the $25 hostel up the street, like with our stuff in lockers, but we had to like stay in this little hotel lobby to, try to get my credit cards back at least so we can like get the fuck out of there, right? But like these two greasy ass promoter dudes were like hella like hovering over us, and we were just like, oh my god. We were like hella in another country. We're like, fuck. But then Revolution comes down the elevator and like starts chopping up with us, and he was just like, yo, he's like, you two ladies cannot be out here with no funds right now, or like with only one of you having resources. This is not it. He's like, I'm from the West Coast, y'all from the West Coast. How do you guys feel about, like standing behind a merch table and selling merch? And we looked at each other like, we know how to do that shit.
Yeah,
we got you. I had been doing it, I had been doing it in the community already. I had like done it for my brother and like his, his homies for like, since I was 17. So I was like, no problem. Right. We ended up selling out all of their merch that they put out for that day, and I was able to earn myself and my homegirl like 400 euros, which is a fucking big ass deal, like, yeah. So that paid for hotels, food, train ticket, and then luckily the cards came in the next day. But like after that, OC like would just kind of check in on me periodically because he'll be like, you still got all of your shit intact? And so like when I had got back from Europe for this like crazy ass like time out over there after like losing several friends to violence and suicide, so I kind of like was just got the opportunity to be elsewhere, and then the hella fucked up shit happened out there, and I was like, okay, so it doesn't matter where you are. It's gonna happen. So like fortitude inside, right? But I ended up, like got back, hyphy movement happened, was telling him all about that shit. And then I was like going to San Jose State for the criminal justice program because I had in my mind that I wanted to always be like some kind of space that was divergent away from the system, right? So I figured like maybe if I plug myself in as a probation officer or something, I could like try to divert like resources and I can try to like do something else. But being there, I realized that they, if you go to that school, they're going to just teach you how to be a cop. And it didn't sit well with my being, right? But I saw the impact of art. I saw the impact of the hyphy movement. I saw what everybody, like I was able to participate in a lot of that, because my cousin was the journalist, like doing journalism at the time. My brother was doing journalism and music at the time. So I was like, I know the power of like being able to present information in other ways that's not in this academic form, and maybe that's what's needed. And so instead, I remember he called me and I was having this moment where OC called me and I was like, I don't think I want to be here, at this school anymore. I can't do it. Like I don't want to be a cop. I don't want a paycheck written by this system. You know what I mean? I don't want I don't want to be reliant on this fucked upness happening the way that it is for it to pay my livelihood. And so then I was just thinking about like what was super powerful. I was like, I think I'm gonna go pick up my camera again and go to photojournalism school and see if I can like tell the stories of our community in that way and see if those like in a different kind of way, and I left, but like OC was like, I'm gonna start calling you Parks from now on. And I was like, Parks? Why? And he was like, you don't know who Gordon Parks is? I was like, no. And he was like, do your research. click.
Whoa, and that was it.
Yeah, and so I did do my research, and I was like, whoa, like Gordon Parks, like he too, like he wrote a book called Choice of Weapon, right? Where he said, I could have picked up a knife or a gun like many of my childhood friends did, many of who are either dead or in jail. He's like, but instead I chose to like pick up the camera as my choice and weapon to combat all the things that I find ugly about this universe. So like poverty, sexism, racism. And I was like, that's dead on, right? Because that was the thing too. I had violent losses. I had homies that were like committing suicide and having like drug overdoses, So like the camera was like the peaceful choice of like, how do we combat this? Like they didn't feel seen. They didn't feel heard. The resources weren't getting to them. And I was like, maybe if we can tell the story a different way, like maybe we can change the narrative. And that's definitely what I've seen happening since then. Like even with the cannabis equity work, because I had the platform where people were watching for like information, because I would be at a public action or I would be, at like City Hall, they were able to go along the journey with me, and I just like being able to record what's happening. Right. So like
I remember that, like, like it felt like a real on the spot, like task force, like, oh, here, this is what's happening today, and click, and you really kept up to date what the movements that were going on in there.
Right. And then now, that unfortunately that kind of work don't pay no money right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just super unfortunate. But like at the same time, I came into this business to sell weed, right? So that also bring me to the point, like, all right, let's use the camera to tell the story. But what's the story? The story is, right, that in our highly gentrified Bay Area, right, that's fast, that's quickly, like people are like, weather's good, like food is good, like like liberal enough, you know what I mean? Like all of the things, like people want to come here, right? People want to pay top dollar here, but like we saw this like encroaching like next like shadow cloud essentially that was coming, and that was big business in cannabis, right? And we're like, nah, because just like in hip hop, right, there's MCs that are telling the real deal. There's MCs that have like worked on skills like no other, but like folks that like are willing to do the clown dance, are the ones that are going to get the deal, And so that was the same. I was like, oh, I've seen this before, here comes the cannabis industry. But instead, let's see, like, if we could really, like, this is our next battleground. Let's see if we can fight to make sure that we don't get washed out on this, like out the gate, that we don't get washed out the gate. But guess what? What's so trippy, that like from everything that we fought for, and I say we because it was a heavy lift, like you can't have a social equity policy without many hands, making it work. So, like we fought for one, priority of permits, right? So like all of the dispensaries being rolled out right now that didn't previously already have a license, right, and that we're doing medical, but all the new ones rolling out right now are rolling out either as an equity business or with an equity partner, right? So that means that there's an economic opportunity for folks, right? People have dedicated shelf space for equity products, right? So like products that are owned by folks that, for San Francisco, it's special for San Francisco, right? Because San Francisco, we decided there's a few markers that we had to have, right? Like where Oakland, it was, if you have been arrested and like arrested, not just like arrested and not just a conviction. So like even if you have your arrest papers, you qualify. So if you've been arrested, or your parents have been arrested, or your brother, sister have been arrested in Oakland, but in San Francisco, it's like you have been arrested anywhere in the United States, right? Because we understand what the economy looked like, right?
Yeah.
Like our folks were going out. Where are you going to get the margins? You're going to get it here when you're getting $1 in each unit, or are you going over there when you're getting like $10 in each unit.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
You know, so like, who are you going to feed? Who are you going to give the opportunity to? Only the people that stayed here are the people, you know, like, are you going to make the opportunity for the reality of what our, you know,
Yes.
like what our residents had to do to try to be here?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And so they took that, and then so San Francisco is the only equity program that you can have your arrest anywhere, but you had to be a resident
Okay.
of the city,
Okay.
right? Again, it's like to be able to like acknowledge the economic pressure,
Mhm.
you know, that a citizen would be under here, to be, you know, to have to like generate that amount of income to just be here, or leave it, you know, to raise a family. So the next thing is that San Francisco also, one of the qualifiers is if you went to public school here in San Francisco for up to 5 years, you know, because we needed an indicator of like, how do we keep the opportunity for folks that actually grew up here and had to deal with more of the factors, because you already know the public school system. So the very interesting thing during that time period was that advocates, you know, for a more just public school system were fighting for something super similar to what we were fighting for. They were saying our Black and brown students are getting suspended and expelled at a higher rate, you know, and here are the stats. So that conversation was happening at the school district, while we were saying brown and Black people are having more arrests in San Francisco for weed, you know. So it was just a perfect storm of different things where it was hard for them to say, no, we're not going to include public school. It's like, what do you mean? Like you just said the discrimination was happening long ago. So, you know, like, how do we do this? So I'm very honored to be able to contribute, and then also be able to like have the opportunity to use policy as medicine, right? Like, where the policy was the poison before, now we have this opportunity because they're, you know, like, they're listening right now and they're ready to like change the words on the piece of paper, but like we have the opportunity to you know, like make you know, like make some medicine for us, you know. Like, even though it's been rough, like their rollout time has been horrendous. They were super backlogged in departments that were facing corruption charges and like all these other things. So like, I remember talking to Selsky, and like when he was able to put his application in, I was like, he was like, yo, sis. He was like, I qualify for equity. I was like, that's what's up. How does it feel? He was like, it was the first time a felony had any good, like, did any good for me.
He's like, thank you.
Yes. You know, like, that's what we trying to do. I mean, yeah. And there's like tiers and levels to the shit. Cause I also know like on the front line thing, I know people that have had a lot of criticism of me being like a voice for cannabis equity in San Francisco, because like physically I don't look like a person that should make those comments, right? They're like, what's that little Latino girl? And I'm like, I'm not Latino, I'm Filipino and Jewish. And they're like, yeah, whatever. What the fuck are you doing here?
Yeah,
You know
whatever you are.
Whatever you are. And I'm all like, everybody's racist. No, no, but it's just like, I also understand that I'm a person that shouldn't be on the front line of reaping the benefits from the first rollout, right? Like, our folks from Hunters Point should be at the front line. Folks coming out of Sunnydale should be on the front line. Folks coming out of the Fillmore should be on the front line. Lakeview, you know what I mean? Like Alameda, like the places that were really, really like under attack. You know what I mean? So like, that's why I was like, you know what? I'm gonna wait until kind of like the smoke clears a little bit before I like roll out my own project. But now I got a brand, and it's called Gift of Doja.
Doja, I seen it.
And
I like the website too. Website's clean.
Thank you. Thank you. And I wouldn't have been able to roll it out without being in partnership and coalition with other equity applicants, right? Because like, that was the thing too. A lot of people thought that this was something to go alone, right? Because of the way that the ordinance was written. It was like 51% ownership by one person, and or 40% ownership and CEO makes an equity business, right? Like, like one person couldn't get diluted beyond that,
Gotcha.
right? However, like who the fuck can afford like paying rent on anything by themselves, like a commercial space by themselves in San Francisco? You see how many fucking places are boarded up and closed up? It looks like a ghost town in San Francisco
Wow,
after the
crazy.
pandemic, you know?
Mhm.
So like we were like, nah, let's just like we have a company called Locals Equity Distro, and it's like five equity applicants, 4 equity brands, 5 equity applicants that are like underneath this house, and then we distribute like other people's goods as well. And most of them are like women-owned brands or like minority-owned brands or other equity applicants. Like we do distribution for Chiefin, which is like the only Native American owned brand out of Oakland as of right now, you know? So isn't that crazy that like that's where we at in history right now? We're like even though
that's crazy.
you know, out of Oakland, California, even though, you know, like the history is like, oh, you know, like we honor, you know, like we've honored the peace pipe and like the medicine comes from indigenous people and all this other stuff, but like that's where we're at. There's you know, but we're proud to be one of their distributors, you know what I mean? So like trying to build that way, you know, like everybody that we're partnered with is like either Black or Asian, so like all of this like Black and Asian like beef that's not beef, but like narrative that's being touted elsewhere. Obviously us from San Francisco, you know, you've been like everybody, you know, it's all like you've been Black and Asian like solidarity for like as long as I can remember.
I can't even, there's literally no time I can't remember that wasn't, you know, solid, like a solid connection. Yeah.
Solid connection. Like the only thing that maybe ever added to conflict was if your project was whack. And we had to say something about it. But like other than that, you know what I mean? It was like, you know, like kicking it after work, gonna get inspired somewhere, you know, like spending some holidays with one another. So it, you know, like the business is structured in the same way. It's like, you know, we rock with who's rocking right now. Like it's not even a thing, you know, like it's so diverse. Like, and we don't, and the fucked up thing is that like other companies are paying like thousands of dollars to figure out how to be diverse, you know?
Oh man, I was just talking.
And we're just like, I don't know. It just is diverse. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But like just kind of realizing again the privilege of like growing up in a city like San Francisco, you know, and like being able to travel elsewhere, like we did to go to like South by Southwest and be able to connect with other artists, you know, and being able to go to New York and to connect with other artists in New York. So that gift that it gave us to just have a different common ground, you know, where everything else was kind of secondary, you know?
That's right. It's like Da Vinci just dropped Black Privilege. You know, I don't know if you know about that. He's dropped that last week, and it kind of like that's part of it. Like
a whole project, a whole project, not just a song.
No, it's an album.
Oh shit! I'm so happy. No. I'm so happy. I know album. I saw like 1 or 2 songs like kind of floating. And stuff. Yeah. I remember, like him and D Howe had went out to like Egypt and to Europe and stuff, and like collected hella footage. Yeah, so I'm glad to see like a full project being rolled out too, because I know, you know, like it's done when it's done, right? It's done when it's done. It's like no sooner, no later. So.
No, straight up, you know, it happens when it's supposed to happen. But it's kind of like it kind of goes like what you were saying, like as far as diversity, it's like that's like the privilege you have from growing up in a place like San Francisco. Like it's just part of your life, part of your culture. You don't have to pay a company, or a company will have to come and figure out a way, like how do we get into this diversity shit and whatever? How do we figure out a way to chip in and be part of this culture and get some kind of respect from this culture? Whereas this is just what, you know, this is what you and I have just we've had the privilege to just be like, this is what we represent. This is our family, friends, everybody that we rock with. So, you know, we don't have to break our neck to get to the cool shit.
We don't have to break our neck to get to the cool shit. We are the cool shit.
We are the cool shit. You know what I mean?
Been the cool shit. Hold on.
Straight up.
Yeah.
Straight up. So, I mean, I want to talk about the evolution. Like, it feels like you've had certain steps. Like it's been tight. I've enjoyed seeing the evolution, you know, from the artist, photography, to the activism, to now the entrepreneurial Nina Parks. So, I mean, how I'm gonna skip this. I'm gonna get to this. Like, how during the pandemic, how did you get the spark? No pun intended. How did you keep how did you get the spark after the pandemic kicked off? Like, did it take you a minute? Like, how did you digest
okay, so
it?
this is okay, so this is the interesting thing though, right? Pandemic hit, right? March 16th, right? That's when they rolled out the shutdowns, right? Well, pandemic hit, but like they rolled out the shutdowns, right? However, we had just started getting like the cannabis businesses up and running, right? And like we saw that in the shutdown, they kept the liquor stores open, right? And we're like, whoa. So there was like one of the first collective pushes from like all industry sectors in San Francisco, right? Because like sometimes we're at odds with each other because there's like the equity group and there's like the non-equity group, and we're
everybody locked in on this shit. Like, yo, hold up.
Yeah, everybody was like, whoa. You know, like we'll figure out some other provisions, but like you realize that if you decrease people's access to like tested medicine during this time period, you are sending people back into, you know, the unregulated space, which is like the opposite of why you guys wanted a regulated space to begin with, because you wanted to ensure that the access was clean, right? And then now during a pandemic where, you know, like there's like issues, you're gonna just send people out like into the streets when you're asking people to stay inside. You know, like you guys got to figure this shit out. And like there was like a whole petition that went out, and like the next day at 4:20, damn near, like London Breed announced that, you know, like cannabis businesses are going to be an essential business and that they're not closing down. So I didn't see too much of a like shutdown. You know what I'm saying? Like I actually launched my business in 2020, you know?
Okay.
And a lot of it was because there was such a big slowdown on a lot of other pieces, you know, like there wasn't as many events, there wasn't speaking engagements, people weren't like running around like reworking policy anytime soon, you know, because like now like all the political and community work stuff all shifted to like mutual aid, right? So like that gave me enough time as an entrepreneur to like work out like what's with the brand aesthetic, you know, like and get back to the creative
it worked out
thing.
for you perfect. It just kind of slowed everything down so you can really just kind of dig into it and just kind of chisel and customize, make everything perfect.
Exactly. And it really though, like, you know, I know a lot of people like they interact with me and they're like, yo, you're so motivated and you got so much energy, but like there's really a lot of people in my life that are pushing that, you know?
Yeah.
Where I can think myself into a corner and I almost didn't launch at all, but like the homies were like, because I was like, it's a pandemic, I don't know, like you know, and they're just like, we have a distribution company, put the fucking weed in the jars and get it, like do it, you know? And thank God for those people. You know what I mean?
I
So
was gonna ask you like if like the rap, if this was a rap interview, we go, man, who are your influences? Oh, you know, that's just Rakim, Nas, and Biggie. What like who are your influences coming up?
mm,
You know, of course that could be anybody too. It doesn't have to be, you know, music. It could be anybody, you know.
right. So like for the weed thing in San Francisco, SF Roots is like
Okay.
the one to look, you know, like that I'm following in the footsteps of, essentially. You know, so like it's Morris Kelly and like his whole squad over there, and they've
That,
been like
what's SF Root? I mean, who's part of SF Roots? Who's the
so SF Roots is Morris Kelly.
okay?
He's actually on the phone, like walking, pacing back and forth on this side. We're at the distribution center, but
Yeah.
he was one of the people that was like super extra supportive, you know, of like I was like, I don't know how to get these labels out right now, and he was like, here's the name of my graphic designer, you know, like sit down with him, you know, like let's just do the thing. Hold on, sorry,
That's all good.
my bad, dude. He was like, you know, like here's the you know, like you know, and then another person is like Ramon Garcia, you know, who has been a partner of mine in working towards like San Francisco, not just San Francisco, but just like the equity push on a larger level. We actually created a trade certification, which we can get into in a little bit,
Okay.
that just got approved by the USPTO. So we actually have a federal trade certification that we're going to start rolling out. Amber Center, that runs Breeze Distribution and was a co-founder with me in Supernova Women. Her vision and clarity of business, as well as like execution and quality, is like really fucking solid, you know. So there's gonna definitely go check her stuff out. It's like Congo Club, and then she started actually the very first publicly funded incubator program for weed businesses out of Oakland.
Wow.
Yeah, say that again. Hold on, no. This again, right? Because how much money have people used, you know, has the cities or like jurisdictions used to lock people up for weed? She was able to get a government grant to build out a facility and get a government grant for workforce development, right? To have people working, developing weed products to sell to market.
That's bananas.
You know, whoa, right? So that's folks like that are like really who I'm looking at.
That's
you know,
what I thought. It sounded like when you were breaking it down, it almost sounded like you had an incubator company, but it feels like I was doing some research and you helped start you have an organization that's helped start a couple of companies. So kind of what's the breakdown on those companies? And that's not, but you're not an incubator though.
No, not an incubator
It's
though. We're
distribution.
distribution. So like if you were looking at the music world, right,
Yeah.
distros everything, right? So
yeah.
you know, like we're still building a lot of infrastructure out, you know, but like the distribution company, it's myself, Gifted Doja, Morris Kelly, who's SF Roots, Ron Brandon, who's a Kingston Royal, what you call it, Nancy Doe, who is she does tissue culture and genetics, you know, so like helping to make sure the genetics are healthy and like working with farmers to ensure that their cultivation practices can help to get the maximum yield, you know. There's so much there. Like this plant is such a complex plant. Like anybody that says that it's really easy to grow good weed is a lie. So, you know, like we got to really big up our farmers, because it isn't actually easy to grow good weed, you know. Like anyone can grow weed, yes, but not everyone can grow good weed. So she works on like the genetic portion to like make sure that like the plants that are getting to people are not gonna get some weird disease, you know, and then take out the whole crop, you know, or like turn it or herm out, you know, and then like pollinate the whole room, you know what I mean? So she works with that. and then Ramon Garcia, who's Sanctuary Farms, right? And that's our core here,
Okay.
right? And then we work with folks like Ojo de la Sol, right? She produces topicals and like bath bombs, and she was a sports. Her name is Danya. Her family like grew up she grew up in Berkeley. Her family's from like Chile, and she like played professional soccer for a really long time and used cannabis to like help keep her away from like all of the opioids and painkillers that comes with professional sports playing, right?
Of course.
So like she comes through and we help to do like biz dev and strategy, distribution strategy with her and stuff like that. So we're, like there's like there's a living ecosystem for all of us here. And like with SF Roots, he's rolled out like Don Toriano's vegan mob weed.
Oh, okay.
Which we distribute. So like being able to find folks that do want like that are doing the work, are pushing the line already, or like has like a reason to be in the game for whatever, like, and being able to help do the biz dev, the business development with them is the kind of where we're at right now. We would love to like work with more folks and like roll out like new product brands, but we're still working on that infrastructure because it does take a long time to get the permits and the licensing. Like we're 3 years into it in San Francisco and maybe like 20 people have been approved, after, so like there are these lofty goals to continue to contribute to make sure that there's a preservation of opportunity, like, yes, we're going to do it, but like, it's nothing off of our back if there's a young person that like is fucking gung-ho and ready to like do the work of like building out all the other pieces. It's like, okay, let's figure out how we can do it. It's an adult after school program for weed entrepreneurs.
I hear what you say. Saying, but it feels like, like a Sweetbreads Creative Collective, just now we're in the cannabis,
Exactly. What, you guys want some weed? You guys want to roll out some weed?
Oh man,
let's do it. Let's do some Sweetbreads.
Ooh, wait a minute. Gotta go talk to the mastermind Algia. See what's up with him. You know what I mean?
I know. What's up with Algia? He down?
Young Gia. He I don't know. I talked to him. Probably about a month ago. I gotta check in with him.
Yeah.
He's a mastermind. He's coming. He's in the lab trying to come up with something.
He's always coming up with something. What's up with that? What's up with the drugs and ammo weed then? Like, what are we doing?
Ooh, oh shit. What we doing? Hey, you talking to
just saying.
What's up?
Just say. I'm just saying. We could come and talk to me on another day. We'll brainstorm.
We already got cups too, so we ready. Hell yeah. Hey. All right, we'll build on that. That was such a. Oh, that's what I want to ask. What's up with the origami? Talk to me about origami.
These ones.
Oh, funky fresh. Like, I mean, are you still active? That's
hella funny. I don't know why today I was like, you need to wear these earrings that had been a minute, and you asked me about it. I love you so much, Ambush. You know me. Like,
what's up with it? Are you still rocking?
Well, I mean, I do it just like as a special like gift and thing to give to other people. And I guess that's something that's always been a quality to the things I've created, right? Like they've always been designed as a gift, right? So like either a gift for yourself or a gift for somebody else. But the origami crane earrings really came about because, and I remember like I told this story to Women's Wear Daily, right? Because I had gotten not a feature, but a little highlight in Juxtapose magazine.
Oh,
and like they had,
that's high.
And my sales had boosted and it was tight, and I was like, oh, this is how it works. And then Women's Wear Daily reached out, told them the truth, and they were like, yeah, it's not for us. Maybe it's for something else. And so the truth is that I had a homie that got hit over the head multiple times by a bottle or a blunt object, you know what I mean? And his name was Fernando Ramos. Fernando Ramos, and I was a friend. He was my friend from high school, and then, you know, like into college and stuff. And young too, and did not even turn 21 yet, right? But he was at a house party. He had already, you know, like already had like the amount of aggression that was needed during the, you know, like the 90s 2000s to be able to like survive and not be fucked with, you know. So like that's how I'm gonna frame it, because he wasn't like, I don't want to say aggressive, because like who didn't have to be like a certain amount of aggressive during that time period just to go outside the door, you know what I mean? Like, so but you know, like he had some beef. It went all wrong at the house party. You know, he hopped into his car, drove, hit a pole, and like got taken to the hospital from there. I think he might have been trying to drive himself to the hospital, actually, which is kind of crazy. But we spent a good week with him in the hospital, watching his body deteriorate, you know. So like I'm processing through all of these images, you know, like having, you know, like, and just like the loss of having somebody so close, like be ripped out of the world in that kind of way, you know? Yeah. And so like it sent me like, I wasn't like the normal kid. Like for me, I was 19 at the time, you know, and like I wasn't like at that point, I'm not a normal kid. You're not gonna have regular ass conversation with me at my at my job interview. I'm sorry, I can't. You know what I'm saying? Like it just wasn't there. I was like the images and the energy was just like too much, and there was no adult around me that could help me process through it, you know? And so I turned to my art, you know, and I started folding the cranes, because the cranes were a sign of peace. And like I had trained as a martial artist from the time that I was 11, even up into that point. So like I was really processing through participation in violence, the power, you know, like the power that one has, what were my own behaviors, you know, because like I had in my head, I had a process through revenge, you know, I had a process through all of these things of like, what are the cycles of violence, you know? And like, little did I know that later on it would continue on with like someone in the community being like, look into the life of Gordon Parks and like how he chose to flip, you know, like that energy, you know what I mean? Like he too navigated through all of that, but like instead he like put everything into his art, you know what I mean? Like, so it was like it was just like this whole process, and all of a sudden I had like these armies of cranes everywhere, and I was like, what the fuck am I gonna do with this shit? So I started like I did some research. I used the washi paper glaze, so it's like a traditional Japanese paper glaze, and I started coating all of the cranes and making them into beads and like putting them together. And like you remember, I was like popping up at like you know, like the club, you know, pop-ups and like all of those kind of things. So like it's still a meditation for me, right? Because it's like the series of motions, like the precision of the folds in order to be able to get like the aesthetic that, you know, I was reaching for. So and you know what's hella funny? I learned, and this is why San Francisco's tight, I learned that from my second grade elementary school teacher. Like
that's right.
During math time, you know what I mean? And so like it was a gift that kept giving, essentially, you know? So I don't know, Bush, thank you for asking that story though. It's the Women's Wear Daily said, oh yeah, that's too much for us. That's not what we were looking for. I was like, what did you want me to say? Like, that's what art, sometimes the dopest art comes from the illest pain. I don't know what to tell you, you know?
Well, I mean, where did they get your information from? They knew they were dealing with, right? No?
Well, it was just like, because it was in the gift section, right? It wasn't no story on me, no nothing. It was just It was just
Oh,
like
that's nice.
ladybirdsf.com. Yeah,
Yeah.
here it is. You know
Uh-huh.
what I mean? Which is cool, but like this is where I'm like I had to start learning as like an adult, like, all right, where, like I guess also it's like the thing that we're learning now. It's like where, like how do we tell our mental health story? How do we tell our, like our emotional life story, right? And then also like, and for like, and this is the fucked up part. It's like, how do we still be able to fit into this place where we can get dough?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like make it comfortable enough so that it's like subsection enough that like the story inspires but doesn't scare folks away because it makes them look at themselves too tough.
Yeah, they're like, oh, that's a little too much information. But that's the whole thing about art though. Like if you get a piece of art, it feels like in my perspective, I think now people want the story behind art. Like they want more than like whereas you used to be able to just here goes some art, here goes an album, here goes a song, here goes whatever. Now, all right, that's cool you did that album. That's cool you did that. But now we need to dig deeper into the origin, what made this happen. So it would seem like to get a story like that, like, man, that's like some gold. That's like a whole movie. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a whole movie behind that origami. Do that one,
Mm-hmm.
do that piece.
Right. Because like this one, like the whole idea though is that I was hoping, and it does happen. It's like whenever I wear these or whenever anybody wears these, there's always some familial connection. Someone else is like familiar connection. So it's like, oh my God, I remember that story when I was a kid. Or, of like Sadako and the Thousand Cranes and like how she, because like even that story of Sadako and a Thousand Cranes, it was like humanity was at its worst. America just bombed Nagasaki and Hiroshima. There was like innocent human beings that were destroyed, like that, whose lives were destroyed by the radiation from the nuclear bombs that went off, right? And like this young girl was about to lose her life, and like the mythology around the cranes is if you fold 1,000 of the cranes, you get a wish of health, right? And she wasn't able to finish her cranes, right? And so her classmates, as like as homage to her, finished the rest of her 1,000 cranes after she passed away. And so like that was like the story that hurtled the cranes into this space, right? But really as a symbol of peace, right? And like since I was going through the confronting my internal violence, confronting why like so many folks around me participated in violence as conflict resolution, and like what does that mean for us? Like what are we actually protecting? Like what are we, like in that, and I was able to sit with myself in those thoughts as I was folding these cranes, but at the same time, like I'm a sensitive ass person, I'm a sensitive as human as much as well as I know that a lot of people are. And so like it was a lot of grief and a lot of sorrow being like moved through as I'm like going through this, so but it was crazy because the end result was like a lot of joy, like of people like giving people something that felt handmade. I still see people wearing my cranes and I'm like, yo, that shit's made out of paper, right? I was like, you got that shit in 2010 or 2007,
Wow.
and it's still like these ones I made in 2010, they're still right. So again, like I've always loved to play with the concepts of like strong and like soft, right? And like like in these things that people feel that are really delicate, right, but are actually like super like pinpointed, precise, you know what I mean? So it's just like with these cranes, they're sharp, watch out, they might jab you in the neck if it's too if you have a short neck. Just kidding. You know what I mean? But like it's like I was talking to my homegirl and like something about even with Gifted Doja, it's like this whole savage ballerina kind of feel. Like my brother's best friend Kazu had a line. He said, in one of his songs, it said, I want a savage ballerina for a wife. She'll ride on my left side, but she be treating me right. You know? And I was like, man, that's tight. That's tight that a dude gets like the hard soft.
Savage Band. That's hard. Yeah.
I mean, of the whole shit. And something I remember from one of Da Vinci's verses that I'll always like keep with me too. It's like a $2 bill uncommon, but she's real. Or like a $2 bill. I said she because I wanted it to be about me. No, like a $2 bill uncommon, but it's real, right? So you know, like just like remembering like that difference makes it special. You know what I mean? That like not the fact that everybody gets their hands. It's not Walmart weed. You know what I mean? Like not everybody gonna get it. You know what I mean? I'm gonna work with boutique growers. I'm gonna work with family farms. I'm gonna work with like folks that have interesting growing practices. Like a biodynamic permaculture. Like and that can explain why that's important, because like as someone that's working in weed at this point, like it's like, all right, this is a holistic process. This is not just this commodity that now I'm going to try to pump it out, because guess what? It creates hella waste. Like it creates, a change in the actual environment, in the ecosystem, because it requires water. It requires pest control. It requires, like soil, right? So are people doing it in living soil, right? Or that can be like regenerated, and like that they're like continuously feeding it and just replanting? Are they doing it in cocoa where there is like a biodegradative like process to it, so at least it's not gonna, just like sit there, you know what I mean? Are they like, or are people like feeding hella plant growth hormones and hella other things to the soil that like at the end of it, it's locked out? They didn't take care of it right. The pH levels were high, like all the other things, and like then it's just more waste in our landfill and like fucking up water systems and like other shit. You know what I mean? So like trying to be mindful in the process. And I know people are like, oh, it's going to take you longer. Oh, you're not going to make as much money. But like, that's the same shit they tell any artist, that's like, I want to use these materials. They're like, oh no, there goes your mass producing. I'm like, but I don't want it mass produced. Like, I want to give people good California cannabis. Like, that's what I want to do. I don't want to, I don't want warehouse weed. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's an option, but I don't want warehouse weed. Like
just like
I don't
music.
actually.
Just like music. Like fuck, you know what I'm saying? Everybody's not gonna want to listen to Mad Lib, but if you like Mad Lib, you love Mad Lib. You know what I'm saying? And he's not doing it. He's not mass producing this shit like that. Everything is it's a process. He might sit on one track for a year before anybody hears it. It's the exact same philosophy, and that's why I think like that's why we connected. That's why it's like that like-minded shit is just like, I would have said the same thing if this moment I was dope, like all the way in the weed, I'd have the same philosophy. Like, yo, man, I mean, we need to rock with that's what they're doing over there. And they're really trying to figure out a way to make this to where people could really benefit. But at the same time, their process takes 10 times longer. You're like, well, we just gotta wait.
And now we gotta wait. It's hella funny because like I hella like sativas, right? The sativas are usually like a 13-week strain versus like an 8-week strain, or like whatever, like it just takes long. 16 weeks, it just takes a little longer. So no one really produces a lot of sativa, because it's not, because also like many of the strains aren't like high bulky like yielders, so like they don't get the same density and the same weight that like like a indica strain would get, right? But also like I'm a highly functioning person, you know what I mean? Like I I smoked and I edited video. I smoked and I like read hella books, you know what I mean? Like I smoked and I ran the lake. Like
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, you know, like where, but then I also understand, you know, because like everybody's different, and everybody's, this is why weed is hella magical in so many ways. Like people have systems in their body that um that process the chemicals that are in cannabis, but it's also because we have hormones in our body that are very similar to the what they call cannabinoids in cannabis. So the chemical compounds in cannabis, we have hormones in our body that are very similar, right? So THC, delta 9 THC, right, is the psychoactive element of cannabis, the one that like kind of that gives you the euphoric feeling and kind of and gives you the perspective shift, right? The hormone that our body produces is called anandamide. Okay, and so anandamide is also known as the bliss hormone, right? It like helps our body to feel good, right? However, individuals that have gone through extreme traumas, either physical, um, for their health, mentally, emotionally, their bodies stop producing as much anandamide, you know, and so it is harder for them to experience like the joy of certain things, right? So cannabis is not the solution, but like they're giving people synthetic like drugs to be able to try to like
Get to that.
like like supplement these losses, right? But cannabis is an alternative for some folks. So that, like that's why I was like, damn, a lot of my folks that have gone through extreme traumas have definitely self-medicated with cannabis, but like it was because their bodies were actually hella needing it.
Yeah, they're missing it. Damn. Wow.
Whereas I have hella other homies that should not smoke. I am not babysitting them during their their parent, their shit. Like it's not the move, because I also realize it's because their systems actually don't need it. Like they're, like it's not made for them. So like it was such an interesting realization as I started to learn more about this plant, about its science and about how we use it culturally, and then also like scientifically how our bodies are processing it. So yeah, it's like THC is a supplement for the bliss hormone, so that's something for people to do more study on, because we have that much information, but we don't have more long-term studies yet that can tell us more, so like that's the amount that we have thus far.
I mean, because it still feels like, you probably heard the term, it feels like it's still like the wild, wild west right now with cannabis. Like I'm not deep into it, by any means am I deep into it, you know what I mean? But I know enough to where I'm like, oh, this thing is just like, I don't know, like it feels like anybody can make a big move with it. It feels like everything is still set, like you said, like the dust is still settling, and it's nowhere near, where it's touching the foundation. So it just feels like, man, like as a, how do you, is it more of an advantage to be kind of indie? Like if this was a record label and you had the independent and major, do you have more flexibility as an indie? Like or would you even call yourself an independent? I don't know.
No, you know what, like the things, sorry, I'm like, who's here? Things that I'm learning. Sorry. Things that I'm learning. You know, lifestyle, quality of life, right? If all of the losses have taught me anything at this point now, is like I need to really start thinking about the quality of life I want to have into my future, and like developing whatever it is that I need in place. And then also really like, what is my value system? And then how do I make the decisions of like plugging in, playing? So I'm not one to judge, because I don't know where anybody else is in their spiritual human developmental path, like if what their being needs right now is to like go on to the corporate route, like there's something there for them, you know, like that's where their journey took them, you know. For me personally, I don't feel really good in misogynistic spaces. I don't feel good around the Chad and Brad bro culture. I don't have the aptitude to sit there and placate it in any way. You know, I'm like I'm annoyed and I'm vocal, you know? So I just have to stay away, you know? Like from being in those spaces that might be like, oh, but that's access to like political connections and money and da 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 da. And I'm like, I don't want to fucking sit at that table and have a meal with them. You know, and maybe that's just me not developing enough like tolerance in my own being, but I'm like, no, because it's ugly with my stomach and I can't do it, you know what I mean? So for me, it's more advantageous of my human journey to stick with my integrity, you know, and like create from that space, and then I am sure that God will provide, you know, that just as long as I'm putting myself in the spaces and building out the infrastructures to support, you know, like money flow coming in and being able to pay people out for like the work that they help me to do, like just as long as my systems are in place, like it'll happen, you know. But I'm not trying to make no deals with nobody that just seem like a good money play. Like it's not all money is good money, you know.
Oof, oof, oof. And I think we'll end it right on that. That's, you know what I'm saying? How do you, that seems like the, you know?
Mic drop.
Yeah, that's it. Be out of here.
Air horns.
Yeah. Hey.
Man.
Thank you for chipping and chiseling me into your schedule today. I appreciate it. We missed it. Like usually we would do our Hyro Day connection, you know, like that would be our like meetup. I mean, I didn't see you at the last. I didn't see you at the last one. I don't think.
No, I was like, I had begun like it was like after my pops passed, and like just needing some time, you know, just to like be and to process all the energies, you know, like Ambush, like I more and more, and I want this for our community to be able to like get the time and space to build up on ourselves spiritually, because I think that it will give us the fortitude that we need, you know, to do the things here and now, you know, just because like I know navigating and having to like survive the rat race of like where's the money going to come from, how is it going to, you know, like how is it going to stay here for, like how am I going to invest it so that it'll actually grow with me, you know, instead of just like leaving my fingertips because I got hella bills and like all the other shit, you know, like I'm trying to remove myself from that space. And I realize the more that I can build on myself spiritually, the better the connections get for the right energy to find me, you know? So just trying to stay in alignment for all of that. That's it.
All right. Well, Nina Parks, what's your like social stuff, your social medias and all that?
Oh yes. So at Nina_Parks Instagram, and then for Gift of Doja, www.giftofdoja.com. Please sign up for the newsletter because Instagram just kicks me off of the platform because I'm a cannabis company, and I would rather connect with you guys more personally. So like sign up if you really want to like come along on this journey with me of like building this the cannabis company. As you've heard my story, like how are we going to build a cannabis company that doesn't compromise my integrity? You know, yeah, I don't know. It's a journey. Please take the journey with me though. Sign up for the newsletter, and yeah, let's just keep on growing in a cool ass world. Let's just make the world dope.
Man, well, we got you, and like I said, I'm always support whatever you're doing. You know, I'll see you. I'm gonna hit you up soon.
Drums and ammo pre-roll. What's up?
Drums and ammo. Drums and ammo.
I'm literally like, we're on it. It's already started. It's already began. It's already started. Hey, I'm gonna hit you.
Okay.
Drums and Ammo. This is This, That, and the Third. Nina Parks, thank you. And I'm gonna holler at y'all. Be easy. Peace, peace, peace.